Hey everyone, Sheldon here, and this is part 2 of the tutorial series for the Paper Dual Extended Hidden Blade. So make sure you guys click on the link in the description to find all of these blueprints. The next thing I'm going to do is take these 2 template layer pieces, cut them out, and glue them to a 10-layer piece of hardened paper. Here's one of them, and the second one. So there we go. I'm just going to glue them to the 10-layer piece, just right next to each other like that. Now I'm just going to cut these out. It's also important to establish the top from the bottom, so I just marked top on here and bottom on here. So for the top, you have to cut out this rectangular piece right here that is in the middle, and also this little part down here at the bottom. And then for the bottom piece, all you have to do is cut out this little rectangle right there. Not this part, but just right here. Alright, there you go. So that's the top and that's the bottom. Now I have the second tier template right here, and I'm just going to glue it to another 16-layer piece. After it's glued on there, you can just go ahead and cut it out. So this is what the second tier looks like after it's been cut out, and you can see it has this little cutout right there as well, and that's very important for everything to work properly. The overall width of this is 0.460, so that's a little bit less than ½ an inch wide. And if you look over here at this cutout, it goes in from the outside edge right here to this line, 0.090, so that's 90 thousandths of an inch wide. The length of this cutout from here to here is 1.615, and from the bottom of this groove to the bottom of the blade is 0.700. And all this information is on the blueprint as well, but I think it's easier sometimes to actually see it on the object. I also have the first tier right here. This is the bottom piece that you guys saw earlier, and this is the top piece. So basically, I just took some 16-layer pieces and glued them along the side, going down, and they were 0.110 inches wide. And if you look at this diagram right here, you can see all the pink highlighted areas are the 16-layer pieces I just added to the flat piece that was already there. You can also see this really tiny piece right here, and that's also a 16-layer piece, but from here to the edge, you can see it's right there also on the template. It's 0.080, so that's 80 thousandths of an inch wide. And then it's 0.190 from here to the top. So you can just look over here. It's the exact same thing. And from the bottom of this first tier to the bottom of this tiny rectangular piece, it's 2.130. So if I put this second tier in here, you can see the function of that small rectangular piece right there. Basically, if I move the second tier forward, that rectangular piece prevents it from flying out. Here's a close-up right here. So you can see if I move this forward, it stops on that rectangular piece. If I move it back, it also stops. So it's pretty simple how this works. So when I glue the top piece on here, it's going to look more finished off, but the internal mechanism won't be affected at all by this top piece. And all of this is going to fit inside of here, just like that. And already there isn't very much friction, so that's a good sign. So now I'm going to make the lock for the second tier, and it's going to pivot right there where that hole is. So basically when this goes out like that, it's going to block the bottom of it, so it won't be able to go back in. I'm actually going to use a piece of wood for this part, which might surprise you, but basically I'm just doing this because if I use paper, it's only going to be like 3 or 4 layers thick, which at that point, it's not going to be strong enough. I'm just going to cut straight down the middle and sort of shave off the excess if I have to. That was a lot easier than I thought. The benefits of wood grain. I'm just adding a little bit of glue right here, or a lot. And I'm just gonna overlap these a little bit and just hold it in position. Now I'm just cutting the excess off. Now I'm just gonna cut a little off the top just to make it thinner. Now I'm just going to drill a small hole right here so it'll be able to pivot properly. And this is a 1/16 inch drill. Alright, I cleaned it up a little bit so it looks decent. So basically, you can see how this is going to function. It's going to go right here, like that. And it's going to pivot, like I said. So it moves over like that. It gets in the way of the second tier, and when that moves out of the way, the second tier can go all the way in, like that. Now I'm just going to add some layers of paper right here, and it's going to go halfway over, and it's not going to intersect the hole. So basically, by doing this, it adds additional height, but still allows room for the spring to fit. Alright, here it is. So now I'm just going to cut off the excess. So just put it down like that and cut it off. So you can see the small rectangle of paper right there, and here's what the bottom looks like. I even added like one layer right there just to finish it off. This is the spring I'm going to be using. Basically I just reshaped a pen spring so it just goes straight and then around in a little circle and out again. So I just used some needle nose pliers to make this shape. So this goes right here like this, and the spring is going to fit in these tiny little grooves right there. So I'm trying my best to show you this on camera, but this is some pretty tedious stuff. So basically, I'm just going to line it up with this, and basically the spring just fits in these grooves. So right there and right there, and it's going to be glued in there. I'm just moving this into the groove. Now I'm just gluing it in place. Alright, there it is. So that spring makes this want to constantly go inward, as you can see. So if I take the second tier and put it right here, and I pull it forward, it locks it in place. So just like that. Here's the lower tier right here with the lock, and if you flip it over, look at the bottom, this is actually a raised surface right there, so it's not flush with this. Basically, if you were just moving something across the surface, it would just get stuck on that because it's a raised surface. If it was flush, you would just be able to go over it without even knowing. So you guys probably remember the groove that's in the bottom of this. Basically, the groove is bigger toward the top and smaller toward the bottom, so it slopes in a little bit and gets smaller. Basically, the slope pushes this piece right here out of the way, so it just moves it. The piece right here on the bottom of the tier basically just fits in that groove, just like that. Since this cutout gets smaller toward the bottom, it actually moves this piece out of the way, so you'll see it move that direction once it reaches the smaller point in this groove. So it's moving down, and you'll see it move out of the way, which will allow the second tier to go inside the first tier. And there it is, right there. So it's moving down and just moved out of the way, so the second tier can go inside the first one. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I wanted to show you before I glued this other side plate on, because it's kind of hard to visualize when you can't actually see it moving. So now I'm just going to go ahead and glue the other side plate on here. So that'll basically complete the blade section of this. And when you guys glue the other side plate on there, just make sure you don't get any glue inside here, or else the second tier will be permanently glued inside the first one, and well, that defeats the purpose of a dual extended hidden blade. Just make sure you only put glue on this wall and this wall. Also make sure you don't get any on that small lock right there. So just line it up with the hole using the pin and just glue it on there. And everything should still function the same. Alright, so it's all glued together now, as you can see, and it functions properly. So this goes out like that, and it stays locked in that position. And then when you move this out of the way, it's able to go back in. So it's pretty simple. And if I put the blade in here, you can see there isn't very much friction, which is good. And basically it's just going to shoot out like this. And then when the first tier isn't able to go any further, the second tier will just go a little bit further like that, and then it will lock in place. And when it goes in, this little lock on the bottom right there is going to get pushed out of the way, which will allow the second tier to go inside the first tier, which I already explained. So here's basically what it's going to look like. So it just goes like that, and then back in, just like that. Alright, so now I'm going to make the locks. So as you can see, this is the small lock right here. And to form the small lock, it's just going to take a couple different components. So basically I have two 16-layer pieces right here, and they're both the exact same dimensions. Both of these pieces are 0.315 inches long and 0.210 inches tall. And when I stack them up together, it's going to equal the width, which is going to be 0.140. This piece alone is not going to form the entire length of the lock, which you can see right here. It's only going to be this part right there. The rest of the length is going to be added using a small cylinder that's going to be wrapped around a 1/16 inch drill. You'll see what I'm talking about. So right now I'm just going to glue these two pieces together with some super glue, just like this. After gluing those two pieces together, it should look something like this. So it looks basically the same, just a little bit thicker. Now I'm just going to take this strip of paper here, which is also 0.210 inches wide. So the width of this is the same as the height of this. Now I'm just going to wrap this strip of paper around this 1/16 inch drill. And obviously I'm going to make sure I don't actually glue it to this, because I want to be able to take it off. And I'm just going to wrap the paper around until the outside diameter is 0.140, which is the same as this thickness right here. Both of these 16-layer pieces stacked up together. Alright, there it is. So I can just take it off like that. And now I'm just going to glue this piece right here, just like that. Now I'm just filling up these gaps with some super glue and baking soda. Now I'm just filing the excess off. Alright, there's the small lock right there, and I already went ahead and made the big one, as you can see. And by big, I just mean it's a little bit longer. So basically, instead of adding a piece that is 0.315 long like that to a cylinder, to make the long one, you just need a piece that is exactly 1/2 inch long glued to the exact same size of a cylinder. And the height of the long lock is the same height as the short lock, which is 0.210 inches tall. So that's what they look like up close, as you can see. And there is one more thing we have to do to them to make them work properly. And after the next step for the locks, I'm just going to make sure I polish them up and make sure all the edges are nice and square. That way they'll work the best they can. So now I'm just filing a groove straight down the middle of both of them. So this is what they look like after filing the groove. And not only did I file it just like that, I also turned it like that and filed right there, just a little bit past the hole. And I did that to make enough room for the spring. Here's an up close shot, so you can see the groove right there. And it's the exact same on both of them, but it just goes you know, all the way through like that. So I'm just going to put the spring in there, which is bent the same way as the spring I used for the lock on the blade. So it just goes in that groove like that, and then this little pin goes through there just like that. So now I can install it in the base. So you guys remember that little tiny groove in there? Well, that's how the spring's gonna work. So basically, I'm just gonna put this end of the spring in that little groove. Just like that. And then I'm just gonna push this pin down. Just like that. And now, this lock has some spring to it. And I can demonstrate that by putting the blade in here and sliding it down, pushes past it, and then locks it in position. Now I'm just putting the other lock in there, just like that. So it's the exact same thing. And it should function as well if I pull this forward. So it just keeps going, and then it pushes past the lock and locks it in place just like that. And I can make more videos about how the locks work in the future if you guys want, because I know it's kind of a weird spring mechanism I'm using for this. Alright, that concludes part 2, and I'll see you guys in part 3.